Hi guys, we got everything going along now, so we need to look at how to count atoms and molecules when we're getting ready to balance equations. All right, so this is the sheet you already had, and I just want to go through it with you. I know some of you still were a little confused with it, so let's go ahead and go through it. All right, so what we're doing is we're counting how many atoms of what it's asking for. All right, so this one says how many sodium atoms? Well, Na is sodium, and this is something called a coefficient. And the coefficient goes for everything that it's in front of. All right, so Na, we have 3 of them. So we're going to put a 3 right here. Okay, now the next one is oxygen. This one's a little tricky. You don't have a coefficient. So if you don't have a coefficient, it's a 1. Okay, remember, usually ones are understood, so we don't put down ones in any of this. Okay, so it's asking how many oxygen atoms are there? Well, this is our oxygen, and we have a subscript of 4. So that means that we have 4 oxygens. Okay, now the next one, how many hydrogen atoms do we have? Well, this one's a little tricky because if you have more than one of the element in the molecule, you have to count them all together. So we have, for hydrogen, we have 4, and then we have 1 more. All right, so that's going to be 5 total. All right, for the next one, how many molecules are shown? So when we're talking about a molecule, we're talking about the whole thing. All right, so the whole thing is the molecule. And we were saying up here that when you have a coefficient right there, that goes for everything over here. So if you have one molecule, but then you have a coefficient of 5, then you have 5 molecules. You don't do anything with the subscripts because you're looking at molecules. Okay, so you have 5 molecules. Okay, how many silver atoms are shown? Now, silver is Ag. There's no coefficient, and there's no subscript, so we got 1. Then the next one, how many MNs do you have? And we're looking for right here. So there's no subscripts, but you do have a coefficient right here. So the coefficient goes for everything in the molecule, so you have 2 of that element. Okay, so I hope this is getting pretty clear. Let me do a few more for you. I'll pick out a few that might be hard. And if you have any further questions, you need to get in touch with me so that we can talk about it. Okay, but let's do just a few down here. How many mercuries? Okay, let's do this one right here. Number 11. How many chlorine atoms do you have? Whoops, you can't. Oh, there it is. Okay. How many chlorine atoms do you have? So chlorine is Cl. All right. So you have 4 chlorine atoms right here, but we have this coefficient. And there's the bell. Just ignore it. I'm sorry. You have a coefficient of 5. So because you have a subscript, it's going to be 5 times 4. Okay, so it's 5 times 4. And that's going to be 20 chlorine atoms. Okay, so when you have numbers, you have to multiply. There's no adding, there's no division or subtracting. It's always multiplying the coefficient by the subscript. Okay. Let's look at number 13. How many total atoms do you have? So you have 12 plus 22 plus 11. So that's going to be 12 plus 22 plus 11. So that's going to be 5, 2, 3, 45. I think that's right. You guys can correct me if you want. Okay, so you have 45 total atoms. Okay, so we're talking about molecules. We're talking about the whole thing. Okay, so like this one is a molecule. We're talking about the entire thing as a molecule. But when we're saying atoms, we're looking at each individual element. Okay? Now, let's do the next one. That one looks kind of rough, so let's try that one. We have how many hydrogen atoms do you have? So we have hydrogen right there, and then hydrogen right there. Okay, so you have 5 here and 1 here, so that's 6 total. But then we have this coefficient, and we have to multiply the 7 times the 6. Okay, so 7 times 6 is 42. So you have 42 hydrogen atoms. Okay, so one more time, you have 5 here plus 1 is 6. Because you have a coefficient, you multiply it by these 6. Okay, and 7 times 6 is going to be 42. Okay, let's try number 16. How many oxygen atoms do you have? And you have 2 oxygen, and then you have 16 times 2. So that's going to be 32. Okay. Let's see. On number 17, how many molecules do you have? Okay, how many molecules do you have? And that is just looking at the coefficient. Okay, so it's asked for molecules. You don't have to do anything with the subscripts. You're just looking at this coefficient, so that's 2. Okay? Now, let's see what else we have that we can look at. Okay, on number 21, it says how many nitrogen molecules do you have? Now, be careful with something like this. You don't have a coefficient. There's no coefficient, and you have a subscript of 2. So if it's asking for how many molecules, you have 1. If it was asking for how many atoms, then that would be 2 because you have a subscript of 2. So be really careful with those. Let's look at a couple more. On number 22, how many hydrogen atoms are shown? Okay, and you have 2 plus 4. Okay, so 2 plus 4 is 6. You do not have a coefficient. There's no coefficient there, so it's just going to be 6. Okay, there's the other bell. Aren't you glad you guys aren't here so you don't have to move around with the bell? You can sit there and eat your breakfast. Okay. All right. Okay, let's look at this one. Number 25, how many total atoms? So you're looking for how many total atoms are in it, not just how many atoms of one element or how many molecules. So you want to know how many total atoms you have. So you have 1, you're looking at the subscripts, okay? 1, and then plus 3 is 4, plus 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. And you don't have any coefficients, so that's going to be 6. Okay, so I hope that helped. We're going to go ahead, and the next video I'm going to talk about balancing equations. But on this one, I just wanted to make sure that you were okay with this worksheet before we moved on. Okay, so look for my next video on balancing equations, and we will see you when we see you. All right, bye.